The jack-o'-lantern on my sister's porch was crooked, its carved grin looking more menacing than festive in the fading October light. I stood at her door clutching a bottle of wine, watching through the window as Caroline laughed at something her husband said, completely unaware that in exactly 3 hours, her entire world was about to change. It was Halloween night, and my father had been dead for exactly 1 week. The funeral was barely over, and here we were, summoned to Caroline's house for what she'd called a family gathering to celebrate Dad's life. But I knew better. I'd received the letter from Thomas Westbrook, Dad's attorney, that morning. The one Caroline didn't know about yet. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're from in the comments. Let me back up. My name is Rebecca Morrison, I'm 58 years old, and until last week I thought I understood my family. My father, Richard Morrison, died on October 24th after a 2-year battle with cancer. He was 82 years old, a self-made real estate mogul worth approximately $40 million, and the kind of man who planned everything down to the last detail, including, apparently, his final revenge from beyond the grave. The door swung open and Caroline stood there in a witch costume, black dress, pointed hat, the whole theatrical production. She was 52 but looked 40 thanks to the small fortune she'd spent on cosmetic procedures. Money Dad had given her naturally. "Becky, you made it." She pulled me into a hug that smelled like expensive perfume and desperation. Come in. Everyone's here." Everyone turned out to be about 15 people. Caroline's husband Brett, their 2 adult children, some neighbors, and a few of Dad's old business associates. The house was decorated like a Halloween catalog had exploded. Fake cobwebs, plastic skeletons, orange and black everything. There was even a fog machine pumping mist across the living room floor. "Quite the party," I said, handing her the wine. Caroline's smile flickered. "Well, you know Dad. He loved Halloween. Remember how he used to go all out decorating the house when we were kids? I did remember. Dad turning our childhood home into a haunted house every October, spending hours carving pumpkins, hiding in the bushes to jump out at trick-or-treaters. Before the business consumed him, before Mom died, before everything got complicated. It seemed right to honor that," Caroline continued, guiding me deeper into the house. "To celebrate his life the way he would have wanted." What she meant was, to look good in front of Dad's business associates, some of whom probably had no idea she'd barely visited him during his final months. I accepted a glass of wine from Brett and drifted through the party, making small talk with people I barely knew. At 8 p.m., Caroline clinked her glass and called for everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began, dabbing at her eyes. "Dad would have loved seeing everyone together like this. He always said Halloween was about facing our fears, about celebrating life even when surrounded by symbols of death. It seems fitting that we're here, 1 week after losing him, choosing to celebrate rather than mourn." It was a good speech. Caroline had always been good at performances. "Now I know Dad's will is being read tomorrow," she continued, and I saw several people shift uncomfortably. "But tonight isn't about money or inheritance. Tonight is about remembering the man who meant so much to all of us." She raised her glass. "To Richard Morrison." The best father anyone could ask for. Everyone drank. I barely managed to swallow past the lump in my throat because, unlike Caroline's carefully crafted tears, mine were real. At 8:30, exactly on schedule, the doorbell rang. Caroline frowned. Who could that be? "We're not doing candy this year. There's a sign." But when she opened the door, it wasn't trick-or-treaters. It was Thomas Westbrook, carrying a briefcase and looking very much like the harbinger of doom he was about to become. "Good evening, Caroline." "Rebecca." He nodded at us both. "I apologize for the intrusion, but I'm here on behalf of Richard Morrison's estate. I have a rather unusual request from your late father that must be fulfilled tonight. On Halloween night specifically." Caroline's face went pale beneath her witch makeup. "Tonight? But the will reading is tomorrow. "This is separate from the formal reading," Westbrook interrupted. "May I come in?" Caroline had no choice but to step aside. As Westbrook entered, I noticed several party guests starting to look very interested in our conversation. "Perhaps somewhere private?" Westbrook suggested. We ended up in Caroline's home office, a room that probably cost more to decorate than most people's cars. Westbrook set his briefcase on the desk and pulled out a sealed envelope with Halloween instructions written across it in Dad's distinctive handwriting. "Your father left very specific instructions," Westbrook began. "He requested that on Halloween night, exactly 1 week after his death, both of his daughters participate in what he called the Halloween inheritance game." "The what?" Caroline's voice had gone shrill. Westbrook opened the envelope and began reading. "To my daughters, if Tom is reading this, then I'm dead, it's Halloween night, and you're both probably confused as hell. Good. You're about to be more confused. I've structured my will in an unusual way. Tomorrow, you'll go to Tom's office for the formal reading. But tonight, you're going to play a game. Think of it as a scavenger hunt, like the ones we used to do when you were kids, Rebecca. Remember those? The game has 5 challenges. Complete them correctly, and you'll learn something important about your inheritance. Fail them, and well, let's just say the distribution might not be what you're expecting. The first challenge begins at 9 p.m. Tom will explain the rules, and girls, don't try to cheat. I'll know. Happy Halloween. Dad." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with Caroline's aggressive air conditioning. This was so like Dad, dramatic, controlling, and probably brilliant. Caroline, however, looked like she might throw up. "This is insane. He can't make us play games for our inheritance." "Actually, he can," Westbrook said calmly. "Your father's will is legally sound. The inheritance is contingent on completion of these challenges. You can refuse to participate, but that would trigger an alternative distribution plan that I'm told neither of you would find favorable." "What's the alternative plan?" I asked. "Everything goes to charity." Caroline made a strangled noise. "The game must be completed by midnight," Westbrook continued. "That gives you 3 hours. Each challenge will be revealed one at a time. Are you both willing to participate?" I looked at my sister. Her face was a mask of barely controlled panic, and suddenly I understood. She'd been counting on that inheritance. She needed it. Whatever financial trouble she'd gotten herself into this time, Dad's money was supposed to save her. "I'll do it," I said. Caroline glared at me, then nodded stiffly. "Fine." Westbrook checked his watch. "It's 8:47 p.m. At exactly 9 p.m., you'll receive your first challenge." He pulled out 2 iPads from his briefcase and placed them on the desk. "Your father recorded video messages for each challenge. They'll play automatically at the designated times. I'll remain here as a witness, but I'm not permitted to offer any help or clarification." The next 13 minutes felt like hours. Caroline paced while I sat, watching the clock on the wall tick toward 9 p.m. Downstairs, I could hear the party continuing. Music, laughter, people who had no idea that above them, 2 sisters were about to compete for $40 million. At exactly 9 p.m., both iPads chimed simultaneously. Dad's face filled the screens, and I felt my heart clench. This had been recorded months ago, when he could still sit up, when his voice was still strong. "Hello, girls," Dad's voice came through the speakers. "Welcome to Challenge 1, the memory test." He smiled, that familiar, slightly mischievous expression I'd seen 1,000 times. "Caroline, Rebecca, I'm going to ask you both the same question. You'll write your answers on the paper Tom provided. No conferring, no phones, no help. Just your memories." The video paused, then Dad's voice continued. "Question 1. What was I most afraid of as a child, and why?" The screen went dark. Caroline and I stared at each other. Westbrook placed a piece of paper and pen in front of each of us. "You have 5 minutes, he said. I closed my eyes, reaching back through decades of conversations with Dad. Most of them had happened in the last 2 years, during his cancer treatment, when I'd spent countless hours at his bedside. He'd told me stories I'd never heard before, memories he'd kept locked away for years, including this one. I wrote, he was afraid of abandonment. His own father left when he was 12, and he was terrified of being left behind or forgotten. That's why he was so driven to build something permanent. He wanted to create security that couldn't leave him. I looked up to see Caroline staring at her blank paper, pen hovering uselessly. 1 minute, Westbrook announced. Caroline scribbled something quickly, her hand shaking. At exactly 9:05, the iPads chimed again. Dad's face reappeared. Time's up. Tom, please collect their answers. Westbrook took our papers and held them up to the camera one at a time, as if Dad could actually see them. Which was impossible, but still eerie as hell. Caroline had written, "The dark?" My answer was read aloud by Dad's recorded voice. Fear of abandonment due to his father leaving when he was 12. There was a pause, then Dad spoke again. Rebecca is correct. Caroline, I'm sorry, sweetheart. But no, I was never afraid of the dark. I told you that story at least 3 times, but you were never really listening. Caroline's face had gone white. 1 point to Rebecca. Dad's voice continued cheerfully. Challenge 2 begins at 9:30. Use the time to think about what really matters. The screen went dark again. That's bullshit, Caroline exploded. How was I supposed to remember some random childhood trauma? It wasn't random, I said quietly. He told us both, multiple times. You just weren't paying attention. She rounded on me. Oh, and you were? Perfect, Rebecca. Always taking notes, always playing the devoted daughter. I was the devoted daughter, I interrupted. I didn't play at it. I was actually there. Westbrook cleared his throat. Ladies, might I suggest you prepare for the next challenge rather than arguing? Caroline stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind her. I could hear her downstairs, making excuses to her party guests about a family matter that needed attention. I stayed in the office with Westbrook, my mind racing. What was Dad doing? Why Halloween? Why structure it like this? Then I remembered something he'd said to me about a month before he died. We'd been watching a horror movie, one of the Halloween marathons he loved, and he'd said, "You know what I love about horror movies, Becky? The truth always comes out. The monster is always revealed. People's real nature shows when they're under pressure. That's what this was. Dad had created a pressure cooker, and he was waiting to see who cracked first." At 9:30, Caroline rushed back into the office just as the iPads chimed. Dad's face appeared again, but this time he looked more serious. Challenge 2, the treasure hunt. Somewhere in this house, yes, Caroline's house, I've hidden an envelope. Inside is a number. Text that number to Tom's phone. First one to find it gets the point. Your clue is this. I am surrounded by faces but have none of my own. I hold memories but create none. What am I? The screen went dark. Caroline and I stared at each other for exactly 2 seconds before we both bolted from the office. A riddle. Of course, Dad would make us solve a riddle. He'd loved them when we were kids, creating elaborate treasure hunts for our birthdays. I am surrounded by faces, but have none of my own. I ran downstairs, my mind working furiously. Caroline was ahead of me, tearing through the living room, checking behind picture frames, under cushions. Party guests watched in confused amusement as both of us ransacked the house. I hold memories, but create none. Then it hit me. A photo album. Surrounded by faces in the pictures, but has no face itself. Holds memories, but creates none. I ran to Caroline's bookshelf, scanning for photo albums. There, a leather-bound album I remembered from our childhood. I pulled it out, and an envelope fell from between the pages. Inside was a single number written in Dad's handwriting, 1987. I texted it to Westbrook just as Caroline came running from the kitchen, her face flushed. My phone buzzed with Westbrook's reply. Correct. Return to the office. Damn it! Caroline screamed, actually screamed, causing several party guests to exchange worried glances. Back in the office, the iPad chimed at 10 p.m. for Challenge 3. Dad's face appeared, and this time I could see pain in his eyes. This had been recorded during a bad day. Challenge 3. The Truth Test. This one is simple. I'm going to make a statement about each of you. If it's true, you say guilty. If it's false, you say not guilty. Tom will verify your answers against records I've kept. Oh God, this was it. The real test. Rebecca, Dad's voice said, in the last 2 years of my life, you visited me every Sunday without fail. Guilty or not guilty? Guilty, I said softly. Caroline, in the last 2 years of my life, you visited me fewer than 15 times, and 10 of those visits were to ask for money. Guilty or not guilty? Caroline's face went through several expressions: rage, shame, defiance. Not guilty. Tom? Dad's voice prompted. Westbrook opened a file. According to Mr. Morrison's detailed calendar and the visitor logs from his assisted living facility, Caroline Morrison visited 17 times in the past 2 years. Of those visits, Mr. Morrison noted that 12 involved requests for financial assistance. That's not— I visited more than that, Caroline protested. He just didn't write it down. The facility has security logs, Westbrook said quietly. They match his records exactly. Dad's voice continued from the iPad. Caroline, I know you're probably arguing right now, but the logs don't lie, sweetheart. And here's the thing. I don't blame you for not visiting more. You're busy. You have your own life. But I do blame you for lying about it, for pretending you were there when you weren't, for the fact that in the last conversation we ever had, you asked me for $50,000 to help Brett's business, and then you never called again. Caroline was crying now, her witch makeup running in black streaks down her face. Rebecca gets the point, Dad said. We're tied at 2-1. The next challenge will determine who takes the lead. At 10:30, Challenge 4 began. This time, Dad's video showed him in his garden, the one at his house, during what must have been spring based on the blooming flowers. Challenge 4. The garden walk. Both of you need to go to my house, right now. In my garden, you'll find 2 envelopes buried under specific plants. The envelopes contain questions. Answer them correctly, and you get the point. Tom will drive you both there now. Caroline and I looked at each other. Dad's house was 20 minutes away. I'll inform your guests you had to step out, Westbrook said, already standing. Let's go. The drive was silent except for Caroline's occasional sniffles. Westbrook drove us in his Mercedes, while Caroline and I sat in the back seat, as far apart as possible. When we pulled up to Dad's house, the house I'd been to every week, the house Caroline hadn't visited in over a year, it looked haunted in the moonlight. Appropriate for Halloween. The garden was Dad's pride and joy, even toward the end when he could barely walk through it. I'd helped him maintain it during his illness, learning which plants were his favorites, which ones had special meaning. Westbrook handed us each a flashlight. Your father's instructions say you'll know where to dig. You each get 1 chance. Caroline looked lost, shining her light randomly around the garden. How are we supposed to know where— But I was already walking toward the corner where Dad had planted his roses, specifically the yellow roses that had been Mom's favorite. I knelt down and began digging with my hands in the soft soil. My fingers hit something. An envelope, sealed in a plastic bag. I opened it and pulled out a card with a single question written in Dad's handwriting. What did I say to you during our last conversation, and what did you say back? My eyes filled with tears. Our last conversation, when he was so weak he could barely speak, when I'd held his hand and told him I loved him. I wrote my answer on the back of the card. You said, I'm proud of you, Becky. You became exactly who I hoped you'd be. Strong, kind, and independent. You don't need my money, but I hope you'll use it to make your life easier. You've earned that. I told you that knowing you, being your daughter, was worth more than any inheritance. You laughed and said, well, You're getting the money anyway, so you might as well enjoy it. Meanwhile, Caroline was still searching the garden frantically, digging in random spots, her expensive dress covered in dirt. "Caroline!" I called out. "Under the hydrangeas." Dad always said they reminded him of your prom corsage. She looked at me suspiciously, but ran to the hydrangeas and started digging. She found her envelope and ripped it open. Her question was simpler. "What was my favorite memory with you?" She stood there for a long moment, staring at the card. Then she wrote something and handed it to Westbrook. Back in the car, Westbrook read our answers aloud per Dad's instructions. Mine was verified against notes Dad had left with Westbrook. Correct. Caroline's answer: when I graduated college. Westbrook was quiet for a moment, then said gently, "I'm sorry, Caroline. Your father's noted favorite memory with you was your 8th birthday party, when he took you to the zoo and you made him visit the monkey exhibit 5 times because you loved watching them play. He kept a photo from that day in his wallet until he died." Caroline made a sound like something inside her was breaking. "Rebecca takes the lead, 3-1, Westbrook said. "The final challenge begins at 11:30. We drove back to Caroline's house in complete silence. The party had thinned out. Most guests had left, probably sensing the weird tension. Only Brett and a few close friends remained. At 11:30, we gathered in the office one last time. The iPad chimed, and Dad's face appeared for the final time. He looked tired in this recording, but there was something like peace in his expression. Challenge 5, the final question. This isn't a test of memory or knowledge. This is a test of character. I'm going to offer each of you a choice, and your choice will determine the final distribution of my estate. He paused, and I could almost hear him breathing. Option 1. You can take a guaranteed $5 million right now, no questions asked, no conditions, no challenges. It's yours free and clear, regardless of your score in tonight's game. Option 2. You can continue with the will as originally structured. Tomorrow, you'll go to Tom's office and learn what I've left you based on tonight's performance and the life you've lived. But you'll be gambling. You might get more than $5 million. You might get less. You might get nothing. You have 5 minutes to decide. Write your choice on the paper Tom provides. Choose wisely. And remember, I love you both, no matter what you choose. Happy Halloween, girls. Thanks for playing my game. The screen went dark for the final time. Westbrook placed paper and pens in front of us. 5 minutes. I stared at the blank page. $5 million was a life-changing amount of money. I could retire tomorrow, buy a beautiful house, travel, never worry about bills again. It was safe, guaranteed, smart. But Dad hadn't played it safe. He'd built an empire by taking calculated risks, and he'd asked me to trust him one more time. I wrote, Option 2. I trust you, Dad. Caroline's hand shook as she wrote her answer. When time was up, Westbrook collected our papers and read them aloud. Rebecca, Option 2. Caroline, Option 1. Caroline had taken the guaranteed money, the safe choice, the choice that said she didn't trust Dad's judgment, didn't believe she'd earned more. Westbrook nodded and made notes. The game is concluded. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., we'll reconvene at my office for the formal will reading. At that time, you'll both learn the full distribution of the estate. Caroline, a check for $5 million will be prepared for you tonight. After Westbrook left, Caroline turned to me. Her makeup was ruined, her costume was dirty, and she looked utterly defeated. You know what you're going to get tomorrow, don't you? She asked. I have no idea. Bullshit! You won. 4-1. You answered everything right. You were the perfect daughter. She laughed bitterly. Of course you get everything. Caroline, no, it's fine. It's fine. I get $5 million, which is more than I deserve anyway, right? That's what this whole night was really about. Dad showing everyone what a terrible daughter I am, how I didn't visit enough, didn't remember enough, didn't care enough. That's not, except it's true. She was crying again, really crying now. I didn't visit. I didn't remember. And you know what the worst part is? I didn't even realize I was supposed to. I thought being his daughter was enough. I thought he'd always be there, always have money when I needed it, always forgive me for being too busy or too distracted or too whatever. She sank into her chair. I took the $5 million because I knew I didn't deserve more. Because I knew that whatever he left you would be earned, and whatever he left me would be charity. I sat down across from her. Dad loved you, Caroline. The game wasn't about making you feel bad. It was about making you see. See what? That relationships take effort. That love isn't just a feeling. It's actions, time, attention, that you can't just show up when you need something and expect people to be there for you. Caroline nodded slowly. I know. I'm starting to understand that now. Too late, obviously. It's not too late, I said. Dad's gone, but you still have me. You have your kids, you have Brett. You can change how you show up for the people who are still here. She looked at me with something like hope. You'd want that? After tonight? After everything? You're my sister, I said simply. That doesn't change. The next morning, we sat in Westbrook's office. He opened the file containing Dad's will and began reading. To my daughter Caroline Morrison, I leave the sum of $5 million as per her choice in the Halloween inheritance game, plus an additional $2 million in a trust fund that will pay her $100,000 annually for 20 years, conditional upon her attending family therapy and maintaining regular contact with her sister. Caroline's eyes widened. He's giving me more? Westbrook continued. To my daughter Rebecca Morrison, who chose to trust my judgment even when guaranteed money was available, who answered every challenge correctly, who showed up for me when I needed her most. I leave the remainder of my estate, approximately $33 million in liquid assets, plus properties, investments, and business holdings. He paused and pulled out another letter. Your father also left you each a final message. Caroline's letter was short. Caroline, I hope the game taught you something. Not that you're a bad daughter, but that you can be better. That relationships require presence, not just proximity. That I loved you even when you weren't there, but I missed you every day. The $7 million is enough to give you security. Use it wisely. Show up for your family. Learn from your mistakes. And maybe, someday, teach your children to do better than we did. I love you, Caroline. I always did. I just wish you'd believed that enough to want to be around me. Dad. My letter was longer, and I had to read it through tears. Becky, if you're reading this, you chose option 2. You took the risk. That doesn't surprise me. You've been taking risks on me since you were a little girl who decided her grumpy old dad was worth loving, even when I was too busy building a company to properly appreciate her. You showed up every Sunday, every hospital visit, every time I called just wanting to talk. You listened to my stories, even the boring ones I'd told before. You held my hand when I was scared. You made me laugh when I was dying. That's worth more than $33 million. Hell, it's worth more than any amount of money. But since I can't thank you with my presence anymore, my money will have to do. Use it to make your life better. Quit that job that's wearing you down. Travel. Sleep in. Buy a house with a garden. Do all the things you've put off because you were too busy taking care of everyone else. And Becky? Don't feel guilty about Caroline's smaller share. You didn't take anything from her. I gave you what you earned through 30 years of showing up. She got what she earned too. A wake-up call wrapped in $7 million. That's a pretty generous wake-up call. The Halloween game wasn't meant to be cruel. It was meant to be clear. To show both of you and everyone watching that how we treat people matters, that love is spelled Time, that you can't buy your way out of neglect or performatively care about someone only when it's convenient. You won because you understood that all along. Thank you for being my daughter. Thank you for making my last years bearable. Thank you for proving that I raised at least one person who knows what really matters. I love you, sweetheart. Always did. Always will. Now go live the life you deserve. Dad. P.S. The Halloween thing was because I knew it would be dramatic and memorable. Also, I always said the truth comes out on Halloween. Figured it was fitting. I folded the letter carefully and looked at Caroline. She was crying silently, staring at her own letter. "He still loved me," she whispered, "even after everything." "Of course he did," I said. "He just needed you to understand what that meant." 6 months later, Caroline and I had dinner every Thursday night. She'd started therapy, like Dad's will required, and something had shifted in her. She asked questions now. She listened. She showed up. She'd also started visiting Mom's grave every week, something she hadn't done in years. She'd bring flowers and sit there telling Mom about her week, practicing the art of presence she'd never learned. "You know what I realized?" she said one Thursday over wine. "The Halloween game wasn't about the money at all." "No?" "It was Dad's way of giving me one last chance to see what I'd been doing wrong. To see what you'd been doing right. If he'd just left me less money without explanation, I would have been angry forever. But the game showed me exactly why I got what I got." She paused. "I'm not saying I'm glad I only got 7 million while you got 33. I'm human. It stings. But I understand it now. And more importantly, I'm trying to earn back what I lost. Not the money, the relationships." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Dad would be proud of you." "Maybe," she said. "But I'm doing it for me now. And for my kids, so they don't make the same mistakes I did." As for me, I did exactly what Dad suggested. I quit my job, bought a house with a ridiculous garden, and started living the life I'd always put on hold. But the best part wasn't the money or the freedom. It was the Thursday dinners with Caroline, the phone calls from her kids, who'd started reaching out now that their mom was teaching them about family, the knowledge that Dad's last Halloween game had done exactly what he'd intended. It had scared us both into seeing the truth. Caroline saw how much she'd missed. I saw how much I'd gained. And in the end, we both learned that the best inheritance isn't money. It's the lesson that comes with it. Thanks for listening to my story. Don't forget to subscribe and share your own family stories in the comments. And this Halloween, maybe think about what truths need to come out in your own life, because the scariest thing isn't ghosts or ghouls. It's realizing too late that you missed what really mattered. Happy Halloween, everyone, and call your parents.